Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. BAM weather meteorologist Brett Waltz here, giving you a long-range forecast update, guys. I hope you all are doing well this morning. We've got the latest details on how long cooler air is expected to linger around as we go into the first half of September. We've got a weeks 3 and 4 forecast update today, and will the drier air hang around as well? It's been a dry into August for much of the Midwest, the Ohio Valley. In fact, some areas much below normal for August as a whole. We'll talk about how much the drier air will hang around, how long it will hang around as we go throughout this video. Starting first and foremost with what's going on this morning. This is a loop of all of the stations across the U.S. that are surpassing or getting close to record-breaking cold lows this morning. You can see across the Ohio Valley and the Midwest, those light up this morning. A ton of record-breaking cold temperatures broken this morning in that region, especially those darker blues that you see. That's where we have officially broken the record low for the morning. So some of the coolest air on record for this date in the eastern ag belt this morning, and in fact one of the cooler ends to August that we've had in the past 35 to 40 years or so. Taking a look at tomorrow morning, more of the same with temperatures well down into the 50s and even some 40s across the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, down through the Tennessee Valley, 50s all the way into central parts of Alabama. All of the circles that you see are the record-breaking lows for tomorrow morning, and you can see 16 of those at least expected for tomorrow morning. So more of the same tomorrow before we start to slowly moderate things a little bit, but it won't really change the fact that the end of August, much below normal with those temperatures. Take a look at precipitation over the next 7 days. Again, more of the same here. Heavier moisture suppressed further down to the south. And we've got a kind of a stationary boundary that will set up as we work into the middle to latter part of this week. Will lead to some heavy rainfall totals, locally 2 to 4 inches of rain in parts of southeast Kansas, southwest Missouri, into eastern Oklahoma, Arkansas, and then down through parts of Louisiana. Parts of western Texas and New Mexico also experiencing heavy rainfall as we go throughout this week. But again, the further north you go, moisture suppressed. Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, eastern and northern Missouri, eastern Iowa, much of Wisconsin, overall a good bit drier than normal as we go throughout this time frame. Some pesky light chances possible in the Great Lakes region, but again, below normal for this time of the year. And we can see that if we take a look at August as a whole, here's where we are month to date. Much of Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, a good bit drier than normal throughout the month of August 2025. You can see where some of those rains happened a couple of weeks ago up across parts of the northern plains, northern parts of Iowa. That was kind of the carryover from July with the active pattern, but if you've been further south into the east, it's been getting increasingly dry. And as we just touched on, a lot of those same areas continuing to run drier than normal as we work over the next 7 days. And so the big question is there going to be a change coming? It's cool right now, it's suppressing the moisture. Will we warm this pattern up? If we take a look at the overall setup as we work over the next 15 days, we will slowly moderate the temperatures heading into the weekend and especially into next week. You can actually see some above normal temperatures possible across the northern plains, upper Midwest to start out September. Those will slowly bleed down to the south and to the southeast. More seasonable temperatures possible for the eastern ag belt by the time we work towards the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of the month. But another cold front right behind it, much below normal temperatures returning by the time we work into the latter part of next week and generally lingering around. And if anything, guys, I think a reinforcing shot of some cooler air possible around the 7th to the 9th of the month certainly appears following the brief moderation that this cooler than normal pattern is going to lock in. Really don't see a reason to disagree with this idea right now. We've got numerous different pattern drivers supporting it. The initial idea, if you think back to a couple of weeks ago, was that the warm-up would be more extended, more notable, because our global winds are so weak. That's La Nina like. It typically favors some warmth. But between some trends in tropical forcing, between some of the hurricane activity that kind of reoriented the jet stream last week, along with some other drivers as well, the North Pacific, cooler air going to be more dominant as we go throughout the first half of September. That will also mean that the pattern stays drier. If we take a look here, this is out through the 10th of September, so the next 15 days or so, continuing to run drier than normal across the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, through the mid-Atlantic. I do think that as we moderate and ahead of that next cold front, there's the potential for some moisture through this region in here, but I'm still a little bit hesitant to say that it's going to be widespread heavy rains. More chances for sure, but not necessarily, I think, a pattern change. I think it's just a brief interlude with some moisture in there before we go back into the more suppressed, drier pattern. Taking a look at pattern drivers as we go into the weeks 3 and 4 time frame, we can see here right now we've kind of moved through MJO phases 2, 3, and into phase 4. It's going to die off here in the short term, and then we kind of loop back around into phases 1 and 2 as we work into early to mid-September. If we look at phase 2, it looks like that would be the more predominant driver here. It favors the cooler than normal temperatures, especially when we factor in that weaker than normal global wind. While that is a warm risk overall, when you combine the global winds with MJO phase 2, it tends to support this cooler air and these colder shots of air. The main risk that I do want to keep an eye on, if we stall out more in phase 1, that does typically favor a little bit more of a southeast ridge. It favors some warmth. Not the favorite idea right now. I don't really see any kind of additional support for this type of idea, but this would be the main risk of the forecast to watch, is that the southern southeast ridge would stay a little bit stronger, again leaning more towards this MJO phase 2 idea, but at least wanted to mention the risk. And we also have other support for that idea. If we look at the North Pacific, it's got numerous strong cold fronts through the middle part of the month. We can see that here on the correlation. Typically when you get a big trough to move through the Bering Sea in Alaska, you typically get a cold shot of air about 16 days later or so. We've certainly been seeing that, and I think we see it again as we work into the second week of the month. Probably a couple of stronger cold fronts in here as we work towards the midway part of September. And generally speaking, while maybe not as cool into the third week of the month, still cooler than normal based off of this signal here before potentially warming things up late in September. So all things considered, the tropical forcing, the North Pacific both tend to favor the cooler air lingering for the first 15 to 20 days of September. But there's not a ton of data support. But I'm not that upset about that either, because if we go back, the EPS weekly completely missed this cold shot. It has struggled all year long. The data has just not been good. However, there is one particular piece of data that caught my attention this morning. It's the control run of the GEFS weekly. It actually highlights, I think, the evolution very well. With the second week of the month, between the 9th and the 15th or so, being a good bit colder than normal across the Midwest, across the Ohio Valley, across the Great Lakes, with that kind of seeping further south but lingering as we go into the week 4 time frame, and then as we close out September, the warmer than normal temperatures beginning to bleed further to the east. And I think that ultimately leads into October, which can still be a warmer and a more mild month for fall as a whole. So I like this progression. Probably the strongest cold fronts in the week 3 time frame, still cooler but moderating in week 4, and then warming up above normal the last 7 to 10 days of September. There's also support for this type of idea from our SOI, our Southern Oscillation Index. That's just simply the difference in pressure between Darwin and Tahiti. Gives us some idea of the background state of the atmosphere. Right now, it's more positive. If we look at the correlation for that, that tends to favor cooler than normal temperatures for the central to eastern U.S., goes to support the cooler idea through the midway part of the month. If we look at all of these different pattern drivers combined, the years that we felt matched the best, 2020, 2017, 2011, 2001, here's how they averaged out for the weeks 3 and 4 time frame. And guys, a couple of things that I want to make a note of with these years. 2017, it flipped on a dime after the midway point of the month. It was very cold the first half of September, and it warmed up big time the second half of September. I could see something like that happening. I do think that we're a little bit slower than 2017. I think it's more the last third of the month, last 7 to 10 days of the month. But I could see a transition like 2017. August, the end of August, certainly the coolest that it's been since 2017. In fact, even cooler than that to end the month. And so that's a very good analog right now. 2011 is another one that caught my attention because there were a lot of early frost and freeze signals via that year or observations in that year across northern portions of the Ag Belt. We put out our official first call frost map, but I would definitely be keeping an eye on these areas in here, especially with those additional cold fronts as we go throughout the first half of September. Again, there is support from that analog of an early frost threat, and actually 2001 as well. Maybe not as aggressive as 2011, but it also would support that risk. So if you're in the northern plains, if you're in the upper Midwest and parts of the Great Lakes, you need to be keeping a very, very close eye on specific details in the forecast as we go, especially into that second week of September, because I do think frost will become a big story as we head through that time frame. There is support for that idea. Taking a look at precipitation, overall it continues to favor the drier risk. I'm a little bit hesitant with this above normal in the Ohio Valley. There are some signals for that down the road. I think this particular setup, this may be a little bit too fast. I would lean a bit drier in here, but the big story, the general takeaway, is a continued drier than normal risk. With all that in mind, guys, here's a look at our weeks 3 and 4 forecast. We're going aggressive with the below normal temperatures. I think the core of the below normal temperatures end up averaging out across the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, might start out further north in week 3 and then shove south with time. Would keep an eye on the very end of the period to start to warm up. Again, we note the warmer risk for the southeast U.S. and the Ohio Valley with MJO Phase 1. As you recall, it was a warmer risk through here. That is something to monitor, but not our favorite idea right now. We've got plenty of support for the cooler idea from other pattern drivers. Taking a look at precipitation, again, favoring the drier than normal risk to continue. I do think that with some of the fronts there can be some moisture, so I didn't add a much below normal, but I would not be shocked if, based off some trends to end the month, we need to add a much below normal area in here. Something to monitor regardless. It's a drier than normal month for the Ag Belt as a whole. Before we go, guys, here's a look at some of those analogs. Here's those top week 3 and 4 analogs for September as a whole, and you can see the cooler air. Warmer air to the west, cooler air down to the south and to the east. With our updated September outlook, we reflected this well. Not putting a much below normal in yet because I still think there's that risk late in the month that we could warm up, especially through this area in here. But I would not be 100% shocked pending how strong these fronts verify if we need to add a much below normal area as a risk before the month is up. In terms of precipitation, again, leaning a bit drier as a whole for the Ag Belt for September. Guys, that's all I have for today's forecast. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Bottom line is ahead, plenty of additional fall front risk will likely suppress moisture. I think any warm-ups are rather brief over the next several weeks before maybe a warmer end to September. Thanks, guys, and have a great day.